Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Trying to eat well, maybe getting more exercise, but the scale just, it doesn't move.
Oh, absolutely. Or you look around, right, and see people eating pretty similar stuff to you, maybe even more, and they just look totally different.
Exactly. It feels like that simple math, calories in, calories out, should work, but it feels like your body's playing by different rules sometimes.
It's honestly one of the most common frustrations people have with weight and health. We get told it's just an energy equation, but, well, real life often tells another story.
Right? That nagging feeling, that sense that there's more to it,
Huh.
that's exactly what we're digging into today. We've gone through a whole stack of material you shared, research, articles, notes, the works.
Hmm.
And our mission here is really to unpack all that stuff and reveal some kind of surprising truths. We want to look past just the calorie number.
Yeah, figure out what processed actually means, how the food industry might be, well, using our own biology against us.
And why just counting calories might be missing the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. We'll look at the hidden impacts of processed foods, stuff that calorie counts totally ignore. We'll get into why different sugars, like fructose and glucose, are handled so differently by your body.
And hopefully give you a totally new way to think about food and, how your body works.
Yeah.
Get ready for some, hopefully some real aha
Oh,
moments.
okay, let's jump in. So, where should we start? I think we need to get clear on this term we throw around all the time: processed food.
Right. It's more than just comes in a box, isn't it?
Way more. The research points to some really specific things that define industrial scale processed food. Think massive production.
Okay.
And the number one goal: consistency. Absolute, unwavering consistency. Every single time, no matter where it's made, it has to taste the same, feel the same.
Ah, okay. Like that same cookie, same crunch anywhere in the world.
Precisely. And to get that, they use standardized ingredients, often stuff that's already been processed somewhere else, from specialized factories. And here's a detail that kind of jumped out from the material. The main building blocks, the macronutrients, in most of these industrial foods, they're actually frozen first before they even get mixed together.
Frozen. Why? Just for transport and storage.
Well, yeah, that helps the business side, definitely. But there's a big nutritional downside that often gets missed. Freezing tends to wipe out most of the fiber.
How does it do that?
When you freeze plant cells, ice crystals form inside, and they basically shred the cell walls where a lot of the fiber structure is. So yeah, it changes the texture, makes things smoother maybe, but you lose a critical nutrient right from the start.
Wow. Okay. So smooth texture, less fiber. What about the things they add? Like emulsifiers. I see those listed all the time.
Emulsifiers. They're interesting and, well, probably not great for us. They're used to keep oil and water mixed together, stuff that normally separates. Think salad dressings, some yogurts.
Right. Stops that watery layer forming on top. Makes it look better on the shelf.
It's exactly. Consistent, appealing. But here's the kicker the research highlights. Those emulsifiers don't stop working once you eat the food. They keep acting in your digestive system.
Oh, what do they do there?
They seem to damage the protective mucus layer that lines your small intestine.
Okay, I've heard of that mucus layer. What's its job?
It's like your gut's first line of defense. It's this crucial barrier keeping stuff that should stay in your gut, like undigested bits, certain bacteria, toxins from leaking out into your bloodstream.
Uh,
It also helps signal your immune system, feeds good bacteria. It's really important. When emulsifiers damage it, you can get increased intestinal permeability. People often call it leaky gut.
and leaky gut, that's linked to bigger problems, isn't it? Like autoimmune stuff.
Yeah, there's a strong association in the research. And here's something really important the material stressed.
Mhm.
You can't just take a probiotic and fix this.
Oh, why not?
Because if you're constantly eating processed foods with these emulsifiers, you're basically damaging that layer and disrupting your gut environment every day. It's like trying to bail out a boat while there's still a hole in it. The probiotics might not be able to keep up with the ongoing damage.
Man. So longer shelf life and a smooth texture could come at a serious cost to our internal defenses.
Totally. And it's not just physical damage. Processing fundamentally changes the food's nutritional value. We talked about losing fiber. Well, when you lose fiber, you often lose a lot of the micronutrients that came with it.
Right, like the classic white rice versus brown rice example.
Yeah.
Same grain, but milling brown rice into white strips out the bran and germ, taking fiber, a lot of items with it.
Perfect example. But here's another one from the material that really makes you think. Farmed fish.
Okay.
You buy farmed salmon, right? Expecting those good omega-3s. But if that fish was raised on feed that didn't have its natural source of omega-3s like algae or krill, well, that farmed salmon might actually have zero omega-3s.
Seriously. Even though it's still salmon.
Yep. It looks like salmon, tastes mostly like salmon, but the critical nutrient isn't there because of how it was produced. It shows it's not just if food is processed or farmed, but the whole system behind it that dictates what you actually get nutritionally.
That's huge. So it's not just about what's missing.
Exactly. And that brings us to another key point. Sometimes the issue isn't deficiency, it's excess. Modern food production can lead to us getting too much of certain nutrients, even ones we need, and that can cause problems too.
Wait, too much of a good thing can be bad. Really?
Absolutely. Nutrition is all about balance.
Yeah.
Take branched-chain amino acids, BCAAs, leucine, isoleucine, valine. You hear about them for muscle building all the time.
Yeah, bodybuilders love them, so more should be better, right?
You'd think so. But studies show that having chronically high levels of BCAAs just floating around in your blood is strongly linked to a higher risk of metabolic syndrome and cardiovascular issues.
Whoa, why?
It seems to be about the excess, the imbalance. Maybe the diet doesn't have enough of the other essential amino acids to actually use the BCAAs properly, so they just build up.
Where does that excess usually come from?
A big source mentioned is animals raised primarily on corn in feedlots. That produces meat with a different amino acid profile compared to animals raised on pasture.
Interesting.
Now, the research does suggest something interesting. Intense exercise might help some people because using those BCAAs to repair and build muscle actually pulls them out of the bloodstream.
Huh. So working out could potentially offset some of that dietary imbalance. Fascinating.
Potentially, yeah. Another example is omega-6 fatty acids. Like BCAAs, we need omega-6, it's essential. But the issue is balance with omega-3s. Omega-3s are generally anti-inflammatory, while omega-6s tend to be more pro-inflammatory.
And our modern diets are totally out of whack on that ratio, right?
Yeah.
Lots of omega-6, not enough omega-3.
Massively skewed. So many processed foods rely on oils high in omega-6, think canola, soybean, corn oil, while omega-3 sources are often scarce. This imbalance promotes chronic, low-level inflammation throughout the body.
And that's linked to, well, pretty much everything bad. Low energy, chronic diseases.
Yeah. It's a major contributing factor. We need some inflammation for healing, obviously, but not this constant simmering background level. It just wears the body down.
So processing doesn't just strip out the good stuff. It can load us up with excesses and imbalances, too. It's like a double whammy that calorie counts just completely miss.
Which leads us right into how the food industry operates. They aren't just making food palatable, they're engineering it. They understand our biology, our psychology, to make things maximally desirable. Sometimes you could even say addictive.
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets a bit sneaky. Tapping into our ancient wiring, right? Sweet taste meant safe to eat. Bitter often meant poison.
Exactly. So adding sugar, or sweeteners, bypasses our natural I'm full signals. It makes us want more, even if the food itself is, well, nutritionally pretty empty.
And the industry definitely knows this.
Oh, absolutely. The research we looked at suggests that even with some small, recent reductions, something like 75% of industrial food products still contain added sugar in some form.
75%, wow.
And the metabolic effect of that sugar goes way beyond just its calorie count. Here's a stat from the material that really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
Drinking just one 600-milliliter bottle that's like a standard soda size of a sugary drink every day
Yeah.
could potentially lead to gaining up to 11 kilograms, that's nearly 25 pounds,
Right.
of fat per year, even if your total daily calorie intake doesn't change.
Oh, wait, 11 kilos of fat from one soda a day without eating more overall. How does that even work if a calorie is just a calorie?
See, it totally blows up the calories a calorie idea, doesn't it? It highlights that the source of the calories triggers powerful metabolic and hormonal effects that simple counting ignores. And while that example assumes calories stay the same, the reality is they haven't. Average daily intake has gone up significantly in the last 20 years or so. Women are eating like over 300 more calories a day, teens around 275 more, men nearly 200 more.
And that increase, plus the type of calories, clearly ties into the weight trends we see. You mentioned intermittent fasting's popularity. Maybe that's just helping people cut total intake without realizing.
That's very likely a big part of why it works for some people, yeah. Reducing the overall load. But the research clearly points the finger for the weight gain trend, not at increased fat intake. The percentage of calories from fat has actually gone down since the 80s.
So it's not the fat.
Nope. It's the massive increase in refined carbohydrate consumption.
Sugars, white flour, that kind of thing. And that links directly to insulin.
Right. Critically, refined carbs, especially the super fast ones like sugar in drinks, cause a big rapid spike in the hormone insulin. And that insulin response drives fat storage much more powerfully than the same number of calories from, say, broccoli or chicken, which don't cause that same spike.
So 100 calories of soda is just metabolically different from 100 calories of broccoli.
Vastly different in terms of its effect on your hormones and long-term weight, which is why we need to zoom in on sugars, because even simple sugars aren't all the same.
Right. We hear simple versus complex carbs all the time. Complex with fiber are generally better, slower digestion. Simple sugars get absorbed super fast.
And your body uses hardly any energy to process them. Think about table sugar versus the starch in, say, whole wheat pasta. Pasta takes more work to break down.
And table sugar itself is actually two things joined together, right? Glucose and fructose.
Yeah, sucrose is glucose plus fructose. And understanding how your body treats these two differently is absolutely crucial for seeing why processed sugar is such a problem. Here's the main thing.
Okay.
Every single cell in your body can use glucose for energy. Your brain needs it. Your muscles burn it. It's so vital. Your body can even make its own glucose if needed through gluconeogenesis. Glucose is fundamental fuel.
Essential. Got it. What about fructose then?
Here's the contrast. No cell in your body needs fructose to function. It can provide energy, sure, about the same calories per gram as glucose, but it's not required. Think of it a bit like alcohol. Alcohol has calories, 7 kilocalogram, but it's not a nutrient we need, and it's metabolized primarily by the liver in a specific way. Fructose metabolism has similarities.
So my body doesn't really need it. How does it handle it then?
Well, your body works really hard to keep blood glucose stable. It's tightly controlled. With fructose, though, the priority seems to be getting it out of the main circulation quickly.
How? Where does it go?
Glucose goes into your cells everywhere for fuel muscles, brain. The more active you are, the more glucose you use. But fructose, it doesn't really enter most cells directly like that. Almost all of the fructose you eat goes straight to your liver, and some to your intestine and kidneys.
And what happens there?
In the liver, a good chunk of it, maybe 30 to 50%, actually gets converted into glucose.
So some of the problems are just from the glucose it turns into?
Partly, yes, but it adds another layer. If you already have trouble managing blood sugar, or if you're carrying extra weight, that liver is already under stress. Dumping a load of fructose on it means more of it is likely to get turned into triglycerides fat right there in the liver, or pushed out as more glucose, making blood sugar control even harder.
So it's not just the glucose effect, it's potentially worse if you have metabolic issues.
The research suggests concentrated fructose is particularly problematic in those situations, yes.
But there was that interesting point about elite athletes.
Right, a very specific context. During really intense, long exercise, some elite athletes can actually benefit from consuming both glucose and fructose. Because they use slightly different transporters to get absorbed, taking both can allow the athlete to absorb and burn carbs faster than using just glucose alone.
Fuels extreme effort better.
Exactly. Any excess might get converted into lactate or fatty acids, which highly trained athletes can also use efficiently as fuel. But that's a very different scenario than the average person drinking a soda.
So for most of us, the takeaway is
The source matters hugely. Fructose in a whole piece of fruit, which comes packaged with fiber, water, and micronutrients, is handled very differently by your body than the concentrated fructose in fruit juice where the fiber's gone, or especially in sodas and foods with added high fructose corn syrup, HFCS.
the fiber makes a massive difference in slowing it down.
Absolutely. So the clear advice from the research is eat whole fruit with its fiber. Avoid fruit juices, sodas, and anything with added sugars or HFCS as much as possible.
Okay. And didn't the material also mention a link between high fructose and leptin resistance, making you feel hungrier?
Yes, it briefly touched on that connection, how excess fructose might disrupt the hormones that signal fullness, contributing to overeating. It's another layer to the problem.
This all just keeps reinforcing how simplistic focusing only on the calorie number is. Which brings us squarely to why that whole calories in, calories out model is, well, flawed.
Yeah, the traditional view, based on the first law of thermodynamics, energy conservation, it sounds so logical, right? Energy consumed minus energy spent equals change in body mass. Simple, neat. A calorie is a calorie.
It's appealing because it seems straightforward, like balancing a checkbook.
Exactly. But the major flaw, as the material points out, is that your body isn't a bomb calorimeter or a simple engine. It's not an isolated system. It's a complex living organism constantly interacting with its environment, losing heat, sweating, excreting waste.
It's much messier than a physics equation.
Yeah.
And the second law of thermodynamics comes into play, too.
It does. That law deals with energy efficiency and transformation. It basically means not all the potential energy calories you consume is actually available or used by your body in the same way. Your body has to spend energy just to digest, absorb, and process the food you eat.
Right, you mentioned that earlier, the thermal effect of food.
Exactly, the TF. And it varies hugely. Digesting simple carbs or fats costs very little energy and maybe just a few percent of their calories. But protein, it takes significantly more energy to process protein. Maybe 20–30% of its calories are used up just in digestion and metabolism.
So right there, 100 calories of protein delivers less net energy to your body than 100 calories of sugar because it costs more to process.
Precisely. And beyond just being burned for immediate energy, calories also serve as raw materials. Protein builds tissues. Fats build cell membranes and hormones. These aren't just being burned. They're being incorporated into your body structure. The calorie number doesn't tell you how your body will allocate that energy or those materials.
So different people eating the same thing might even process it differently based on their metabolism, gut bacteria.
Absolutely. Your individual enzymes, your gut microbiome composition, your hormonal status, it all influences how you extract and utilize energy from food.
Which circles back to that soda example being so potent. The research showed increased diabetes risk even if total calories were kept the same.
Right. It proves that the source drives specific metabolic effects independent of the calorie count. Excess sugar, or HFCS calories, are far more likely to promote things like fatty liver disease than the same number of excess calories from protein or fiber-rich vegetables. Calorie counting completely hides these critical metabolic differences.
And didn't the material mention even zero-calorie sweeteners can sometimes mess things up?
Yeah, that's another twist. Some research suggests certain artificial sweeteners can still trigger an insulin response in some people or alter gut bacteria in ways that negatively affect metabolism despite having 0 calories. It's complex.
Okay, so the science is shaky, and then there's the practical side. Counting calories just often doesn't work for people long term.
Well, first off, let's be real. Who is actually accurate at counting calories?
Yeah, definitely not me. It's hard.
It's incredibly hard. Studies show we consistently underestimate how much we eat, sometimes by a lot, and we tend to overestimate how many calories we burn through activity, even the fancy watches.
They're not that accurate.
The research mentioned error rates for devices like the Apple Watch can be around 11–15% or even more for calorie expenditure. That's a pretty big margin of error when you're trying to balance a supposed equation.
So the calories outside is a guess, and the calories inside is probably underestimated. Not a great formula.
Not at all. But even if you could measure perfectly, your body adapts. This is crucial. When you significantly cut calories for a while, your body often perceives it as a famine situation.
And it slows down.
Exactly. Your basal metabolic rate, the energy you burn just existing, tends to decrease. Your body becomes more efficient at conserving energy as a survival mechanism.
No, the dreaded plateau.
That's often what it is. Your calories outside drops to meet the lower calories in, so weight loss stalls. And worse, this makes rebound weight gain really likely when you start eating more again because your metabolism might now be slower than when you started the diet. It's a hormonal response.
But you said the type of food can influence those hormones and metabolism.
Absolutely. Foods aren't just passive bundles of calories. They send active signals to your body. Eating adequate protein, for example, tends to support satiety hormones and muscle maintenance, which helps keep your metabolism humming along. It positively affects the calories outside.
And fiber.
Fiber is huge. It's not fully digested, so you don't absorb all its potential calories. Plus, it feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and those bacteria produce compounds that can improve insulin sensitivity and potentially even promote fat burning, again influencing metabolism beyond just simple calories.
Okay, this helps explain that really weird paradox you mentioned, how someone could technically be in a calorie deficit for the day but still gain fat. How does that work again?
It seems counterintuitive, but it can happen, especially if someone has insulin resistance or generally high insulin levels. Imagine eating a large amount of high glycemic food, lots of sugar, refined carbs maybe in one meal, Insulin spikes hard to deal with that rush of sugar. Its job is to push that energy into storage, first as glycogen in muscles and liver. But if they're full, or the spike is big enough, it readily converts the excess to fat.
Stored away.
Right. Then, later in the day, even if you don't eat much else and are technically in a calorie deficit overall, if your insulin levels are still relatively high from that earlier spike, it can actually block your body from effectively accessing and burning that stored fat for energy.
So your body needs energy, but the high insulin locks the fat away.
It can interfere with fat mobilization, yeah. Your body might break down muscle tissue or rely more heavily on any remaining glycogen or incoming carbs instead of tapping into those fat stores efficiently. The hormonal signal, store fat, from the type of food you ate earlier, overrides the overall energy balance for the day.
Wow. So the tendency of the food matters more than the number.
In many cases, yes. The research really emphasizes that the hormonal and metabolic environment created by your food choices is far more important for body composition than just the calorie count itself.
Okay, so if counting calories is flawed scientifically and doesn't really work well practically, what should people do? What's the path forward?
I think the clearest, most powerful message from all this material is stop obsessing over the calorie number. Shift your focus
To what?
to the quality and origin of your food. The hormonal and metabolic impact it has is way more important than its calorie value on a label.
Okay, so practically, if someone wants to make a change, where's the starting point if not counting?
The most fundamental number one step, based on everything we've discussed before even thinking about strict low-calorie dieting, is to focus on eliminating or drastically reducing foods with added sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and other highly refined, high GI processed carbs.
Just start there. Why is that the absolute priority?
Because doing that single thing dramatically changes the nature of the calories you're consuming. You're removing the primary triggers for those fat-storing insulin spikes. You're reducing gut-damaging components like emulsifiers. You're lowering inflammation.
And making space for better stuff.
Exactly. You're creating space for foods that send different signals to burn fat, preserve muscle, especially if you prioritize protein, improve your gut health, and just generally support a healthier metabolic state.
It's like changing your body's environment inside and out.
That's a great way to put it. Improve your internal habitat, feed your good gut microbes with plenty of soluble fiber from whole plants, and improve your external habitat, control the food that's easily available to you. That often means cooking more at home.
Yeah, the material mentioned that shift away from home cooking.
It's significant. Knowing how to prepare simple whole foods is a fundamental skill for health. Who cooks your food? You. Focusing on nourishment or an industrial process, focusing on profit and shelf life makes a huge difference.
Think of that calorie label.
It tells you what's chemically in the package, sure, but it tells you almost nothing about what your unique body will actually do with it.
So if we ditch the calorie counting, what do we track instead? How do we know if things are moving in the right direction?
Monitor the things that actually reflect what's happening in your body. Your weight, sure, but maybe even more importantly, things like your body fat percentage, your waist measurement, how your clothes fit, how you feel, your energy levels.
The real world outcomes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those measurements tell you the actual results of your body's complex response to your diet and lifestyle in a way that chasing an abstract, often inaccurate calorie number never can.
Wow. We've really covered a lot. We've gone from that simple, almost mechanical idea of weight, calories in, calories out, like an engine,
The neat and tidy version.
to this much more complex, maybe messier, but ultimately more accurate picture. It's driven by hormones, gut health, the actual source of the food. It changes everything.
It really does. And the core action, when you boil down all this research, seems pretty clear, doesn't it? Getting rid of the processed sugars, the HFCS, focusing on food quality that's way more fundamental than just trying to cut numbers.
So here's a final thought for everyone listening. Given how hard it is to count calories accurately and how much the type of food dramatically impacts our hormones and metabolism, maybe we're better off learning to listen more closely to our own body's signals about hunger, fullness, and energy rather than just trusting those numbers on a label. Something to think about.